What's going on, Geminites? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, GemMint. Today we're going to count down the top 10 X-Men stories that the MCU could use for Phase 5. And I thought, who better to bring on as a co-host than the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition? What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, GemMint? Thank you for having me on. So this should be really fun. We put this list together, so let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, for sure. We put together a list of 10 X-Men storylines, and we had to make sure it was nothing that was already used by Fox. They did over 10 movies, and they had stuff like Days of Future Past. They had the Dark Phoenix saga twice. So here are, in order from least likely to most likely, what we think that they could use for the MCU films. Now, before we jump into the list, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, hit the notification bell, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the like. We're going to jump in at number 10 with the Age of Apocalypse.
So this is one of my favorite stories that happen in the comic books, right? But the fact that they've done Days of Future Past with the time travel elements already in there, and we've seen this really dark future, makes me think that they're probably not going to do this one quite yet. But I'd love to see Apocalypse just sitting in his throne with all these minions of X-Men that you've come to love as heroes now are evil, right?
Yeah, and that's why we have it as the least likely on the list. But I could see a cool origin where they're kind of showing flashbacks of the X-Men universe and Legion going into the past, trying to assassinate Magneto but accidentally killing Professor X, creating this whole alternate timeline.
I guess another thing they could probably do, too, while they're making this movie is recast some of the actors by casting evil-looking versions of them.
Yeah, it's definitely something they can do, a fresh take at the X-Men in live action, and a fan-favorite storyline for sure. Alright, number 9 on the list, we're going to jump into Bishop's Crossing, which is actually a book that I'm reading right now. Now, I know it's not the most iconic X-Men storyline, but if you think about the time travel aspect, it could really tie in with post-Endgame.
Right, and the comic book honestly started the whole Onslaught thing, too, so if they wanted to go that route, they could do that. And I think that's probably why we didn't put it on this list. Well, mainly because of Deadpool, right? Recently in the Deadpool movies, they used Cable, time-traveling guy from the future coming back to the past to kind of change the future. I figured they might not want to stick to that formula because Bishop is practically the same thing, right?
That's true, but it's funny you mentioned Deadpool because that's the only franchise that's coming over from Fox that is not changing anything. So it could kind of be a joke with Cable being Josh Brolin and also being Thanos and kind of tying Deadpool into the X-Men movies.
Oh, okay, I can kind of see that. I can see him cracking jokes about how they've used this plot before in his movie.
Yeah, I can see Deadpool like pointing at Cable like, wait, aren't you? Or something like that. All right, number 8 on the list. I'm going to shoot this one over to you, Omar. This is one of your favorite storylines.
It is. This is the Phalanx Covenant, and this is cheating a little bit because the Phalanx Covenant was originally supposed to be an X-Men animated, like, little mini story. However, the editors at Marvel, they decided to make it into a comic book event during one summer. So it's pretty much, the original idea was to have Jubilee go into the mansion and, chill out with all the X-Men, her friends, and every one of them turn into monsters, or what turned out to be the Phalanx, which are these cybernetic beings that can assimilate with you. So think like the Borg, except they can start creating body doubles too while putting you into a stasis of suspended animation in some kind of pod. But I think it would be really cool to see this on screen, just because they could throw horror elements like they're doing so with, whenever the hell they decide to release it, the New Mutants movie, throwing in the Demon Bear saga.
Yeah, they have to do something different with over 10 movies under Fox's belt. They have to start thinking of different villains, us seeing characters in a different way. So it could be a movie or an aspect of a movie that they could definitely use. I'm going to kick number 7 over to you as well because this is Fall of the Mutants.
For anybody who's been watching my channel, they know that Fall of the Mutants is my favorite X-Men crossover event. However, it's separated into 3 different segments. You have New Mutants, X-Factor, and X-Men. And I think the element that they can borrow from this mostly is the coming of Angel, making him an Archangel, but throwing it in with the X-Men storyline, which is the adversary versus the X-Men. Because we've seen the X-Men fight robots, we've seen the X-Men fight other mutants, we've seen the X-Men fight humans. I want them to fight something, and the adversary was this supernatural force, and that's what I kind of want to see. I want to see them taking on this entity that isn't really, like a monster, but a supernatural being.
Apocalypse plays a big role in that as well, no?
Yeah, he plays a big role in the X-Factor issues.
I could almost see them using Apocalypse, but them doing him more comic accurate because, let's face it, the other Apocalypse movie, it just didn't really do it for anybody. So I can see Feige still incorporating Apocalypse slightly in that whole Archangel transition.
All they need to do is throw little cameos in every X-Men movie, dude. Like 5 seconds of just Apocalypse smiling. That's all I need to see. Let's set that up.
All right, jumping into number 6, I think this is a no-brainer and probably one of the easiest ones they can pull off, Avengers vs. X-Men.
Yeah, we know this is coming. This is one that everybody has been wanting to see as soon as Disney bought the rights for Fox movie franchises. Everybody was like, Avengers versus X-Men. That's got to happen.
It just makes the most sense, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the same conflict. It doesn't have to be the Phoenix Force, although they could probably still pull that off. But just having like a Civil War type of movie or like a battle type of crossover movie, there's definitely an opportunity there.
And I'm going to be the one to say this, but it can only happen with the original Avengers, so I hope it happens now. And by original Avengers, I mean the original cast. Of course, we can't cast Patrick Stewart, because we know probably all these mutants are going to be recasted.
Yeah, that's true. All right, number 5 on the list, the rise and the fall of the Shire Empire.
Oh yeah, this is a big Ed Brubaker storyline that tied in the X-Men to the cosmic events. So when War of the Kings came out, the X-Men were up in space already, and you were like, oh man, it's more than just, this huge annihilation event. Now it's a Marvel event, and it would be so awesome to see the X-Men with the Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor in Asgard, all that stuff. Oh.
Yeah, the MCU has already established their cosmic universe, and it only makes sense that they want to expand that even further. And with them also having the rights to Fantastic Four, introducing the Shire, the Imperial Guard with Gladiator, with Smasher, and we've already seen the Skrulls and Captain Marvel. So this one is a no-brainer and will introduce a slew of new characters. All right, number 4 on the list. We're talking Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, specifically Rogue vs. Captain Marvel.
I think it would be a unique way, because we've heard rumors already that Rogue is going to appear in Captain Marvel movies, but everything's a rumor right now. I think it would be a unique way to introduce Rogue as a villain first and introduce the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants outside of the X-Men movies.
What's unique about that is I don't think most people know that Rogue started off as a villain. Only comic readers that really read comics around that time probably remember that stint, Avengers Annual 10 and Rogue being a villain. But when you have the X-Men and you have already Captain Marvel established in the MCU, it only makes sense to show Rogue's origin like that. And I think that scene would look great on camera. All right, cool. Let's go to number 3. So we don't really have a storyline name for this. We just got Omega Red. He's got to be coming.
I think visually he would look really interesting. And you tie him in to the Weapon X project and Wolverine, and automatically, kids from the 90s are like, oh my God, it's Omega Red, right?
And he's already rumored to be somehow related to the Black Widow movie, which takes place back in Soviet Russia. And you have the Red Guardian, so you already kind of have a little bit of background established. It could be so easy to sneak Omega Red at the end of Black Widow.
Oh man, if that's your first mutant on screen, that's going to be so interesting, but I'm down with that.
All right, number 2 on the list, we're going to take it all the way back to the original X-Men storyline, The Children of the Atom.
People complain that we've seen enough origin movies, right? We've seen enough Spider-Man, Superman origin. But honestly, X-Men like to start off with another origin with the original 5 and just modernize it. Everyone would go see it. I mean, even the people that are complaining that, nah, I'm done with origin movies, everyone would go see that.
I think it makes sense for them to show the Mansion, show the original 5 training as younger teens with Professor X. I think it just makes sense, and I think they can do it so much different than First Class and really set up the whole X-Men universe. The X-Men universe is so big that it almost needs an origin story. All right, guys, before we jump into number 1, I want you to go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Notification bell's on. Make sure to go check out Near Mint Condition and subscribe to their channel as well. And I wanted to talk some honorable mentions. I think with what we've seen in the past with comic book movies, they don't always adapt one story and make one movie out of it. So you're probably going to see aspects here and there mixed with some original ideas. But one of the storylines I wanted to kind of just touch on was House of M. See, with House of M, we already have Scarlet Witch established in the MCU, and with her saying that iconic scene, no more mutants, it could even be a flashback, and then we are brought to present day where there's only a small handful of mutants. Maybe it happens somewhere in the blip, and there was a mutant-rich world in the MCU that now we just have a few that maybe lead into something like Children of the Atom.
I really like that idea, and I love alternate worlds, which is why we put Age of Apocalypse on here. But I think what they may do is kind of like what you just said, except they may use that as a catapult for mutants appearing in the MCU. Instead of her saying no more mutants, she'll say something hokey like mutants or something. So everybody's like, wait, what's that? Then all of a sudden you have this splurge of just mutants. But again, that's just me fan-faking a little bit.
I see that, and yeah, it would be a good introduction. Man, I just hope they wouldn't change her iconic line. I think that would be that would cause problems with the fanboy community.
Yeah, you know how bad we rage.
All right, do you have any kind of honorable mentions or anything you wanted to touch on before we jump into number 1?
Yeah, man. I wanted to, this is just my daydream of Banshee and Forge, 2 of my favorite X-Men that nobody ever really talk about, but a buddy cop kind of film with Banshee and Forge in search of the X-Men. Like during the Siege Perilous, right after Fall of the Mutants, the X-Men were thought to be dead, right? So then you had characters like Banshee and Forge that refused to believe that they were dead. So they were looking for clues all around the world, trying to find these dead X-Men. And I would love to see that on screen somehow, just because I love those 2 characters. And I think it would make a buddy cop movie based in the X-Men universe would just make for a really fun movie.
Yeah, and it's funny, during that time, it always seems like Forge and Banshee were always kind of like chilling back at home base, trying to figure things out, and not, like you said, not believing that everybody was dead. That leads into... that's the end of the Claremont run that runs into the Jim Lee era, correct?
Yeah, man.
All right, well, let's jump into number 1. You guys probably saw this coming, but we're going to go with Second Genesis. Well, most people refer to as Giant Size X-Men number 1.
Yeah, I think more than likely this is the way they're going to go. Because this introduces your popular characters that people probably relate to the X-Men. And non-comic book readers, right? You have Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, and Cyclops. And yes, Thunderbird and Sunfire. But I think if you throw those characters in there, those are the ones that they've been used to seeing on screen. So I think this might happen first, or before even the Children of the Atom movie, as we called it. Just because I think Wolverine is just the selling point, and always has been, even though people are burned out on him, or they say they are.
How do you not play with, like, the coolest toy when you have this franchise and not use Wolverine? You know, kind of going off the cuff and talking about this, I would love to see a Children of the Atom hybrid type of movie where you start with the original team and maybe midway through or toward the end you get the new team. But either way, I think it's highly likely that we're going to see some form of new Genesis, whether it's just the team or maybe even the Krakoa, which actually could lead into something we didn't even talk about with House of X Powers of 10.
Yeah, that's because we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's just do the first 10.
Right? We got a lot of rich history to jump into before we could go into the most recent run. But you know what? That new Genesis could introduce Krakoa and make that part of the cinematic universe.
I'll be down with that.
All right, guys. That's our top 10 picks for what the MCU could use to bring X-Men into Phase 5. Comment below. Let us know what storylines you think that they could adapt. And I want to thank Omar from Near Mint Condition for coming on, for doing this homework with me and putting together this list. You guys make sure to go over there, shoot him a sub, and check out his videos.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for having me on, man. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, if y'all enjoyed this type of video, let us know in those comments. We'll make more. Not just of X-Men, but other comic book characters.
We already got some ideas in the works. Appreciate you guys watching. Stay minty fresh. Peace.